Myths are what society, what experts, what the movies and books have taught us about what sex is supposed to be and what it's supposed to be for us as women and how it's supposed to look with a man in a relationship that we have never slowed down to question. Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. What we're talking about today, the surprising secrets that your wife holds about sex. And where we're headed in this is actually getting into the myths that we as women hold about sex that we have never thought to question in ourselves, and that keep us stuck in a place of being a victim to sex in our marriage and staying disinterested and shut down to it and making it the central issue in our marriages. So that's what we're really talking about today. And the reason we're talking about this is, as I've been mentioning the last few episodes, I am writing my first book, which is going to be for married women, married to good men, teaching women how to re-engage with sex and teaching women how we got here in the first place and a sustainable path to a healthy sex life and marriage and opening back up to it. And most importantly, learning to enjoy it for ourselves. As women, we have never learned to enjoy sex for ourselves. It's always had a hidden agenda tied to it. We've done it for the man. We've lived in victim stories of sex is for men. There's nothing in it for me. So we've never learned to enjoy it for ourselves. As I shared in the last episode, we've been actresses. Everything that we've taught ourselves to be in sex, everything we've thought we knew about sex has been copied, watched, and learned from somebody else, and we've never slowed down to really understand ourselves and enjoy it for ourselves. So this book is a path forward for married women like me who are stuck in this issue where I was about 10 years ago in my marriage, and teaching women what it took for me to resolve the problem of sex in my marriage and have it be an enjoyable experience and not have it be a problem in the relationship, which is so freeing. So this episode today is another chapter in the book, helping women to uncover and let go and overcome the myths about sex. And myths are what society, what experts, what the movies and books have taught us about what sex is supposed to be and what it's supposed to be for us as women and how it's supposed to look with a man in a relationship that we have never slowed down to question. It's become the construct of how we view sex that runs in the background that we don't even realize is there. And then we don't think to question it. We'll get into the why we don't think to question it here in just a little bit. But one of the first steps, and it's going to be one of the first chapters in the book, one of the first steps for us as women to re-engage in sex for ourselves, want to be engaged, and to be able to take responsibility for that role in our marriages, and to understand and acknowledge and appreciate sex as something that's very important to our husbands, and we want to be good wives. The book I'm writing, this episode, is for women who want to change. Women like me who recognize I'm not on the right track here and nothing I'm doing is working to solve my issues with sex, and I want to change. This is for the women who want to change, who recognize this is an issue and that it's yours to solve in yourself. And one of the first places we have to go is looking at the myths that we hold on to, that we've bought into from society. The culture and society have brainwashed us into believing about sex. And in this context, believing about sex for married women. So one of the central tenets that I'm trying to teach women, married women, about sex is that sex is supposed to evolve and change and adapt to the realities of a marriage and life once we're adults and married and in our adult life. No one has ever taught us that sex is supposed to change, that sex in marriage doesn't look like it did in the beginning of a relationship where the romantic love was hot and heavy and there was a lot of passion and a lot of intensity. Unfortunately, the material that is out there to try to help women overcome their issues with sex is trying to get us to go back to where we were in the beginning and to reignite the passion and intensity in the bedroom that we had in the newness of the relationship, and teaching us that if it doesn't have that passion or desire or intensity, that there's something wrong with our sex life and something wrong in our marriage. So what I want to teach women and couples and the good men out there that maybe get lost in the myths as well, because we buy into these myths as a society, but helping women and helping married couples understand that sex is supposed to evolve. It's supposed to change. There's an evolution of sex after getting married. So we have to realize that the passion and intensity of sex that we had when the relationship was new is not sustainable. We have to find a way to recreate sex for ourselves other than what it gives us. We have to find ways to recreate sex for ourselves as women rather than what it gives us. That's our perspective, has always been, what are we going to get out of having sex? And for us as women, that was the marriage, the man, the kids, the family, the life, the fantasy that we imagined. We also looked to get out of sex a sense of feeling loved. I know for me and my early experiences of sex, I wanted sex to make me feel loved. And I thought sex equated to love. I thought sex equated to a relationship and being wanted and desired. So as women, we have hidden agendas with what we can get out of sex. That's part of the big issue. Once we get what we want as women, getting the marriage and knowing we had to have sex to get the man and get the marriage. Once we have that, that's part of where we begin to shut down, put walls up, and disengage from sex. And that's the secret to overcoming the issues, is that we have to ask ourselves, how do I recreate sex for me and my own enjoyment? And of course, sharing the benefit of that with our husbands, knowing it's important to them, rather than what am I getting out of it for me and what's in it for me, and not looking to recreate the passion and not looking to sex to make us feel loved. Ladies, we have to be honest and stop living in the fantasy of what we expected marriage to be, a romantic fairy tale and what we see in the romantic movies. And it's always fascinating where the romantic movies end is when everything is great and new and they finally get together, and then we never see anything after that because that doesn't sell. The reality and challenges of marriage don't sell in that regard. So we have to stop living in what we expected marriage to be and start living in the reality of what marriage is, and understanding the romantic love that we had in the beginning of a relationship, which was often fueled in the bedroom and in our experience of sex. We have to realize that romantic love, it's just reality. That romantic love fades away. Because once we're married and in real life, we're faced with the challenges of life. Kids, careers, money, health, our spouse's health, family members' health, and parents getting older. We're faced with the realities of life, and it's not sustainable and it's not realistic that romantic love we have in the beginning is going to continue, and that we're supposed to somehow contrive it and fuel it to be able to continue. That's the fantasy. So the real question is what makes a marriage work? What makes sex in a marriage work when the romantic love fades away? What we need to understand, there's an evolution. There's an evolution of the romantic love in the beginning into a mature sense of care and appreciation of each other. The other question becomes, if the romantic love fades away, that was fueling the passion and the intensity in the beginning of the relationship, how does sex need to evolve to be congruent with the realities of marriage? And that's what we have to begin to ask ourselves so that we can re-engage with sex and can solve the issues and problems of sex in a marriage that we have as women, shutting down, disengaged, finding it boring, seeing it as an obligation. To overcome that, we have to redefine sex in a marriage. And one of the first steps in that is overcoming the myths that we have bought into, so we can make the bridge to evolve into what a healthy sex life looks like in a marriage. We can't cross the bridge and evolve to what sex is in a marriage in a healthy way without seeing and understanding the myths. Because otherwise, the myths act as the unconscious barrier to the enjoyment of sex for women in a marriage. So where we're headed are 10 myths that women carry about sex. And as I was preparing for this topic, I had to look at and realize that for myself as a woman, I never stopped to question any of these. Never reflected on them, never asked myself, are these true or not? Or what's my experience of sex and how does it work for me? I never thought to question any of these. And the reason that we don't stop to question any of these as women is that we're living in Camp Victim. We're living in Camp Victim, wanting to make sex the reason that we are so unhappy in our marriages. And then blaming whatever the problems and issues are around sex, blaming our husbands for that. So we live in a cognitive dissonance and don't look at these myths, or don't look to redefine our experience or understand the truth of our experience with sex, because these myths serve us. These myths serve us to be able to stay in Camp Victim, feeling like sex is a burden, feeling like it's an obligation. So again, we have something to blame for our unhappiness in marriage. We want to hold on to the problem, because if the problem isn't there and we're still unhappy, the only place left to look is ourselves. So this list, again, just reminding you, this is for women who no longer want to be in Camp Victim around sex, who want the problem solved and want to solve the issues of sex by moving into Camp Take Responsibility, which is the opposite of being a victim. In Camp Take Responsibility, we look to ourselves. We're accountable for our own experience, and we recognize I am where I am because of me, which is very empowering, because that allows us to then be the solution. And the problem for the married women I'm speaking to who want to change, who want to look at these issues, the problem is we've been so caught in Camp Victim, and we've been so caught in what society and the experts have told us, that we don't understand how we've gotten to be so disinterested, so bored, so frustrated, disengaged, and feeling obligated to sex. We don't understand how we've gotten here. So the myths are a major contributing factor of how we got here. The myths that we've been sold and have bought into as women around sex. And they're just the construct of sex that allows us to stay in victim and feeling burdened by it. So in looking at the myths, you want to see this, ladies, as a red pill moment, seeing the truth of our woman ways, as I put it, and what's really going on that allows us to look in the mirror and take accountability so that we can truly change and get out of Camp Victim. With these myths, we are incapable of enjoying sex for ourselves because it's so woven into our culture, and we don't even question them. We just believe them to be true. So for the women who want to take the bridge from the fantasy and what we expected sex to be in our marriage, what we expected of our marriage and with our husbands and that romantic love to continue, this is part of what we need to do to have the evolution, to have a healthy, sustainable sex life and marriage, and understanding that every one of these myths are just an excuse we can use of why we can't or won't enjoy sex. The first myth that we have bought into, that society tells us, is that size matters. That we can't have the full enjoyment of sex if our husband is small. Through commercials, movies, sitcoms, we've been told, and those movies and sitcoms and commercials make fun of men and lead us to believe that a larger size is more enjoyable and better and more masculine, and that the bigger the better, and that the smaller you can't enjoy it. And we buy into this myth, when the truth is that most women are intimidated by a larger size and don't know what to do and get scared and uncomfortable. The second myth, sex is supposed to be spontaneous and passionate. So sex experts try to convince us, and this is in the books all over the place, try to convince us that spontaneity creates excitement and eliminates boredom in the bedroom. The truth is, as women, we don't like spontaneity. If we're honest with ourselves, we don't like spontaneity because we don't want to lose control. Spontaneity takes away our control, and the truth is, we don't like surprises. And the reason we don't like surprises, even though we want to believe we do, and we will make men believe that we do, is that if it's not my idea, I don't want it. So we'll even say as part of the problem, well, it's not spontaneous. If you could just be spontaneous. And I'm sure there's men who have been told that in their marriages and then try to initiate in spontaneous times, and they're completely rejected. So it's just a myth. Number 3, the man is supposed to initiate and pursue us. Society paints the man in sex as the person in charge. That men are supposed to be responsible for creating the experience of sex. And the truth is that as married women, we need to initiate sex. And the reason we need to initiate sex is, there's different reasons, but the one I want to talk about today is it shows our husbands that we care and that what is important to them matters to us. The fourth myth we need to overcome as married women to re-engage with sex: we are like ovens, and we need to be warmed up to be in the mood for sex. And this is reinforced over and over and over again, that society and experts tell us we are not like men who can be ready on a dime. And the truth is, we don't need to be warmed up, and we can be physically ready at any moment that we choose. That we are fully capable of having sex as a physical experience. The reason that we feel we need to be warmed up and have been told that is that women view sex as an emotional experience, which will actually be one of the myths here in a moment. But we think sex needs to be an emotional experience, and to have that emotional experience, we have to be warmed up. But we don't. We can be ready just as quickly as a man if we want to. We have to learn the way to just choose, but it's there and it's possible, and it makes things so much easier. The fifth myth that we have to overcome is that the man is responsible for creating and giving us our experience of sex. That as women, we don't need to know what we like or what we want, that they're supposed to know. And it's constantly in the movies that a woman's enjoyment of the experience of sex is based on the man. And if he's not good in bed, then we don't have a good experience with sex. And if he is good in bed, we have a good experience, which places all the responsibility on a man. And the truth is, as women, we're responsible. Newsflash, we're responsible for communicating what we like, what we don't like. And of course, we have to then know what we like and don't like, and that we are responsible for our experience of sex. That sex is not how something or someone makes you feel. It is how you allow yourself to feel. And that responsibility sits firmly on our shoulders in the bedroom, not on our husbands. The sixth myth that married women have to overcome about sex and marriage: romance is important for a woman to feel desired and to set the mood for sex. So that we need candles, rose petals on the bed, a candle at dinner, and that somehow that romance is supposed to continue once we're married and in the reality of life. And society reinforces again that it's the man's responsibility to set the mood with romance. But the truth is, romance fades in a marriage. And any romance is a contrived experience created because of the expectations of the wife. Number 7, sex is supposed to be special and have a deep emotional connection. And society pushes this with technique and practices like Tantra, and that it can't be ordinary or common or have a routine to it. But the truth is, the enjoyment of sex is simple, and that God made our bodies perfectly to enjoy it for the simplicity of what it is. I will share with you guys a funny story here. When in the beginning of my marriage, and I was in this place of being shut down to sex, I was very lost in reading the books and very lost in reading the techniques, which became very overwhelming and didn't do anything to help me overcome my issues, and decided that I needed to read this book on Tantra. And one of the practices was sitting, before engaging in the bedroom, sitting just across from each other with a candle in the middle and eye gazing. And bless my husband, he is such a good sport. I was like, all right, I'll try it. That's what you want. I'll remind you guys, my husband, wonderful man, and he's a plumber and just a wonderfully, simple man, and bless his heart, such a good sport. I was like, all right, we can do this candle eye gazing thing. And it was so awkward and so uncomfortable. But I thought of that as I was coming up with this one. I'm like, oh my gosh, Karen, really? So we have a laugh about that one from time to time. So number 8 of the myths we need to overcome as women to re-engage with sex: that women need sex to be an emotional experience, not a physical one. And that's what society and experts tell us all the time, that for men, sex is physical, and that for women, it's emotional. And the truth is that in a marriage, once we're faced in the realities of life and the romantic love fades, we need it to be a physical experience that we enjoy and share with our husbands, because the passion and the romance fades. And the more you're trying to reignite the passion and the romance, the more overwhelmed and pressured you're going to feel and disappointed, because you're not going to get back there, or anything you think you're getting back to in there is completely contrived. So we need to learn to enjoy it for the physical experience. And then within that, in a marriage and in the realities of marriage, the connection is there because you've matured and evolved to that deep care of each other. And when you enjoy sex for what it is in the physical experience, then the intimacy and connection automatically follow. Number 9 of the myths we have to overcome to re-engage with sex as married women. Number 9, sex is supposed to last a long time. That society says the longer that it lasts, the better. And that good sex is determined by how long sex is. And the truth is, as women, we don't want it to last a long time. And that matured sex in a marriage lasts about 7 to 10 minutes, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and that you can fully enjoy it. When I was thinking of this one, I thought of a funny comedy skit. I think it was from like the late 90s, early 2000s, the beginning of what I knew of Dave Chappelle's career, and he had the Dave Chappelle Show, and there was a skit where it was like a commercial, and he had created this box that lit up, and it said, wrap it up, like wrap it up. And like you could use it in a meeting with your boss, or you could use it with a family member that wouldn't stop. And then there was a scene of a couple having sex, and the woman reaches down below beside the bed and she grabs the box and it says, wrap it up. And so that's a myth that it has to last a really long time. And when you think of the realities and the responsibilities of life, we don't have time to have sex for hours or 45 minutes or an hour. So take that pressure off of yourself to see the reality of what it looks like in a mature relationship. And the 10th myth, if we don't have an orgasm as women, sex is not enjoyable. That society tells us, and feminism tells us, it's unfair if a man climaxes and a woman does not. So in order to have a fair, equal experience in bed, women also need to climax. But the truth is, women can fully enjoy the experience of sex without an orgasm. That it isn't necessary to have a pleasurable, enjoyable, full experience of sex. And it doesn't mean that we can't achieve an orgasm and learn to do that and teach our husbands what works and fits for us. But the problem is we put the responsibility on our husbands that they're supposed to give us an orgasm. And if they don't, it's something they're doing wrong, instead of learning to achieve it for ourselves if it's important to us. And I've talked with women who it is important, and they learn to achieve that for themselves because they want that experience. And I've talked with plenty of women who say, it's not really that important to me. And they might struggle that their husband, who might have also bought into this myth, their husband says, I want you to. What do I need to do that? And they feel maybe overwhelmed because it's not easy for them. For some women, it's easier. For some women, it's much more difficult to achieve a climax. And if it's important to you, as a woman, you have to learn to achieve it in a loving, kind way. Communicate what works to your husband. And if it's not, to lovingly and kindly share that so that he's not feeling responsible and that he didn't do a good job or he's lacking in some way if you don't achieve an orgasm. And those are the 10 myths that married women carry about sex, and women in general carry about sex. As I said last time, and being a good marketing person, you will have to wait for the book for the solution and the how-to in overcoming and re-engaging with sex. So I'm excited as we continue to work on that. We don't have a projected date yet. We have one in mind, but I'm working on how long is it taking me to take the videos and work them into a readable chapter, using the videos as a guide and seeing how long each one will take me, and then we'll have a projected date. So I'll get that to you guys soon for the book. Someone asked if you can pre-order the book, and as we get closer to a projected release date, yes, we will have that option to be able to pre-order. So I'll keep filling you guys in as I know more information, and I'm just really excited to be headed in this direction. This will not be the only book. I know I'm really excited about this and moving in this direction, and know it's a call from God to be able to spread my message and help more people than just with my courses, but also to have books. So no, there's going to be a series. There's going to be a Happy Wife School series of books, but this was the one I felt most important to start with, seeing how it's one of the most common and biggest issues that we have in marriage.